So it begins in a story, on a farm, in a village, in a valley, part of a great rift in the world where it all began, for all of us. A huge split in the land that runs from Lebanon to Mozambique. About 450 people, 100 families, a tight-knit village community. This story, this conversation, this play began in a telephone call with my brother, Danny, in Israel about a year ago. I said, Danny, I know what I'm going to do for my final project for my master's degree. I'm going to do a solo show, a one-man performance on peace in the Middle East. No, Mo, he said, no, it's not about peace in the Middle East. It's your own conflict that you've got to deal with. Your inner conflict, your relationship with Israel, that's what you've got to sort out first. And so, this journey, this search has raised all kinds of issues and concerns, decisions and indecisions and confusions about the past and the present, and has raised images of youth and memories of dark, confined spaces. This separation, this alienation demands I speak honestly, insists on truth, insists that I speak with you truthfully at every moment. These are my lines and fragments. They all have names and stories of their own. But who can ever tell what is certain? Who knows what's important? Why we take these journeys that we do? Who writes these stories? What fits where? Where the essence of the story lives. I live my life between these lines, unsure, adrift, and seeking. Don't ask me, please. Please don't ask me. Don't question me. Trust me, believe me. Listen, be my witness. Do not ask me what it means to be separated from the land without a name or tongue. My soles cannot feel the earth. My toes grasp like scorpions, searching for the crevices in the gravel of the past. I am older now. I have lost my roots, adrift from language, land and legends, searching only for a place of harmony and truth between here and there, between past and future, in a story that really has no beginning and has no end. I ask you too, I ask you now, what would you do if your roots were somehow cut away and you were thirsty for the land where you were planted, parched, removed from the soil and the sun and the earth. We all have a beginning and an end, connected by our roots. Sure, it's lovely to believe in something, but the uncertainty is always there. Who you are, where you are in this moment, you have never been before. Judith Maria! Judith Maria! Mach schnell! Mach schnell! Nicht das Führen! Nicht das Gehen! Mach schnell! Kommen Sie hier! Mir habt du gern! In 1846, my great-great-grandmother was born in Austria, in Vienna. I was 16 when my father lifted me onto the back of a wooden ox cart, piled with all my worldly goods and chattels, my Shabbos dress and my brass candlesticks to bench lift each Shabbos, and took me from Vienna to Fokshani, a tiny village in the Carpathian Mountains north of Bucharest. 1,000 kilometers across Europe, across Austria and Hungary and Romania, he was taking me to meet a complete stranger, my second cousin, David Bromberg, who I was to marry. He owned an inn on the road between Constantinople and Odessa. They took me 1,000 kilometers and 27 days from my mother and from my home. Mädel, nicht wein, alles gut, seine gut, alles gut. She cried all the way. They gave no place for sorrow, no place to think about tomorrow. There was not even time for a real goodbye. Over the next 20 years, my great-great-grandmother, Judith Maria Bromberg, gave birth to 8 stillborn children. How do you account for that? How do you deal with that? How do you survive the trauma? What gets passed on? I was 16 when they took me from my home and from my mother. And I was 36 when I gave birth to my first daughter, Rachela. And I was 38 when my husband David died of galloping consumption, TB. After he passed, I sold the inn and went down from the mountains back to the city, to his family in Bucharest. And I knew my great-grandma, Rachela, Judith Maria's firstborn, until I was about 20. She was in her 80s by then. And she told me how much she loved Bucharest, like her mother had loved Vienna. She loved the avenues and the boulevards, the gypsies playing music on the streets, and in the cafes, the elegant women in their new fashions from Paris, and the carriages and the footmen. We called her Mama, and I asked her once, Mama, tell me about my great-grandpa, Dada. Oh, I will tell you about your Dada. I was just past 18, just past my birthday, and my good friend Herta Marx invited me to a small dance at her house to celebrate her graduation to the university. It was a wet and stormy night. I walked in the rain, and when I arrived, her house was full of music and perfume and people. And by the time I got home, I called to my mother, "Oh, mother, please come down, come down." Oh, mother, it was such a night of honeysuckle. I have met a boy, a man, Morris Meyer, 22, a journalist. First he was a blacksmith, then he is a writer, and he writes on behalf of all the minorities, the Jews and the Gypsies, all the minorities. And he spoke all night of freedom and justice and equality. Oh, mother, such values, such vision. And before I knew where the words came from, I found myself saying as they tripped off my tongue, they came from where I did not know, "Oh, mother, I think I want to marry him. I know I do." And in a whirlwind romance, they courted and married within 6 months. My friends, we are all excluded from political life. Only real Romanians can vote. Only Romanian citizens can be elected and stand for public office. We cannot vote and we cannot own land. We are not permitted to work in the state hospitals. We are not allowed to join the police force. Absurd. I say absurd. The only route that we foreigners have to obtain naturalization is to show that we are useful to the country. My friends, this recent legislation, this hocus pocus that declares that forthwith we are all aliens, this outrageous law provides those scoundrels in the government with no basis for such willful and capricious treatment. More. For decades, we have been treated like second-class cattle and wounded horses. The Romanians have bought and sold us for dozens of years. They use us as slaves. Our families have been torn apart. Our women from their menfolk. Our children from their mothers. Our young women have been regularly raped by their masters. One provincial governor, you all know which, forces us to climb trees and shoots us down with bows. Hunting crows, he calls it. And we, the so-called crow scum, are still subjected to abuse and violence. I say no more. No more. They treat us like animals. My friends, we are craftsmen and traders and merchants, but we are not citizens. We are in Wallachia and Bessarabia and Bukovina and in Transylvania, but under the law we do not exist. My friends, here's what I say, no more. They say Romania, freedom are for the Romanians. I say freedom is for us all. No matter who, no matter where, no matter when. We are all brothers and sisters. 2 minutes later, the Romanian security police crashed through the gates, carrying sticks and stones and guns, burst into this demonstration and arrested the leaders of the civil rights movement. They, the police, along with the government, loathed the minorities. They arrested all the leaders of the movement and threw them into prison on high treason, no less. They arrested Morris's younger brother-in-law, David, 17, threw him into jail for 2 years, and whether by a miracle or more likely because he knew the chief of police from previous articles and interviews, Morris escaped and he fled to Britain in a trauma that he never really overcame, leaving a pregnant wife behind. Oh, I will tell you about your dada. With the police about to arrive on our doorstep, he grabbed 2 coins and fled. And there was no time for sorrow. There was no time to think about tomorrow. There was no time to think about the baby. There was not even time for a real goodbye. And I did not know that so much of this lives inside me. I didn't know that I could know these people across the generations. I didn't know that I could feel them in my blood. I didn't know that I could feel the pain and the splits and the fragmentations. I didn't know that I am so constantly close to the exile and the refugee. I didn't know, not really, not deep in my bones, that I am the everyman, always, the everyman, always. Here's what you know about me. That I was taken from my mother and raised by a princess. That I was removed from my people and raised by a people of a foreign land. But here's what you do not know about me. That even though I had 5 names, my mother called me Yakutiel, and my father called me Heather, Avizanoa by my brother, Yared by my sister, and Moses by the house of the Pharaoh. Even though I had 10 names, I always knew who I was. I always knew where I came from. I always knew what was right and what was wrong. I was never alone. They tried to test me. They tried to test me. I put hot coals in my mouth when they tried to test me to see if I was wise or stupid. But the Archangel Gabriel saved me. He guided my hand to the hot coals and I lived. I was never alone. I was never alone, not when I was in the water, not when I had to flee without even time for a goodbye, not in the desert between bushes of burning fire, not high in the mountains, in the clouds, and not even much later, far off, on another peak, when I was forbidden to come down and cross the river. I knew that it was not a punishment. I knew that I had done what I had come to do. Okay, stop. Place and identity go back as far as Moses. And this is the part of the play, the story, where I want to introduce my grandfather, Harry. We called him Papa. And Harry was a very difficult character to discover in the process, in the rehearsals. The more we approached him, the more we got stuck. We all knew that he was morose, very locked into himself, arrogant, obstinate, stubborn, even violent, and brilliant. He was a king-sized know-it-all, even more than me. And his talent for making the wrong decision was close to genius. He lived with us when I was about 18, and before that he was living in our house kind of every weekend. But I realised I really didn't know him. And you see, Harry is the one who lives most in me. I am most like Harry. Harry has been the key to this all along. So, here's Harry. In Jerusalem, just before he left and came back to England, in a trauma that he never, ever really overcame. Here I am, overwhelmed by anger and confusion. Jerusalem, my love, don't say I could have done better. Don't say I could have done more, that I could have been different. If it were not for you, I would not have survived at all. My life has been squeezed now like darkness and silence and old wet shoes. I walk at night on silent streets, but this city gives too much, too soon. I long for the ink and the print. I long for the news and the noise. I long to hear again the debates and the speeches. I long to be part of building something just and new and fine. Do not speak to me of choices. How many times I made the wrong choice. I weep. I sit behind my books and my daily newspaper, and I weep. I weep for the many lives I could have led, so many paths I could have taken. When I look ahead of me, what is behind me is always in front of me. I search only for the truth. I search only for the truth. And the truth is, it's time to go home. New dawn, dew on mist, sharp air, crisp on the mountainside. Follow the hairpin bends down past gnarled old grey olive trees and ancient granite boulders, down, follow down to the ramshackle tiny bus station, neon-lit gas station, stone police station, cafe standing under the morning star, silent, and turn left. Turn left and travel north. About 1 mile. Travel north towards Lebanon and turn right. The road to Damascus. Turn right. It's the Hula Valley, Upper Galilee. Home. Home to orange groves and cotton fields. Home to Messiah and miracles, home to hawks and falcons, apples and avocados. Soldiers sitting on their tank tracks, drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, waiting for instructions. Farmers making their way to pick the last of the cotton and the apples. Children playing by the doors of the shelters. I live here. I live here in this valley, in this village, in this rift. I live here. This is the trauma and the wound. This is the alienation and the separation. This is the story that I must map. I live here in a one-bedroom apartment with a shower outside on the balcony, right beside the airfield. And see, look, there's the airstrip, not 30 yards from my room, right to the edge of the kibbutz. And there, the cowsheds, and the tall grain silo, and the dining room, and the kitchen, and the service yards, and the office block, children's houses, baby houses, kindergartens. Saturday, October the 6th, 1973. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Kibbutz Machanaim, Upper Galilee. 4 of us standing outside my room, confused by these sounds, when suddenly the woman starts screaming and we all freeze. Except for Hannah, who's still screaming, La Yeladim! La Yeladim! To the children! To the children! And we take off. We hit the ground running. Get the children! Run to the baby houses! The Yom Kippur War started at 2 o'clock. I remember that, but I do not remember the day before or the week before, the ordinary days. Quick! Get the children down to the shelters! And we are in a human chain, throwing babies and children 30 in the air, one to another, down into the shelters. Oh my God! This shelter is locked! Somebody's meant to take care of these things. Call Jonathan! There is no chain. Everybody is running, carrying babies in their arms. And there is nobody around. There is nobody above ground. And I did not know that so much of this lives inside me still. I did not know that I can feel the earth shake beneath my feet still. I did not know that I can smell the dank, dark underground shelters still. I did not know that I can hear the yelling and see the running to the children still. I did not know that I was wounded. Oh my, that's right on top of us. Jesus, I hope these shelters hold. We went into the shelters just after 2 o'clock. It was the heaviest artillery bombardment since the Second World War. And we waited. We waited till the times between the shellings got longer. We waited till it went quiet, eerily quiet. We waited till it went quiet and still and silent. And very carefully we put our heads outside the shelters. And there was Jonathan. tractor, pulling his wagon, already clearing up the mess. לעזאזל, מה עשיתם? זונות, מה עשיתם לנו? דפקתם לנו את הכל! יא בייש! זונות, מה עשיתם? הכל שבור! And then, Golda, the Prime Minister, is on the radio. My friends, citizens of Israel, once again we have been forced to endure ordeal by battle. I am confident that none among us will fall prey to panic. Fall prey to panic! The Syrians were on our doorstep and she was asking us not to panic. And you know what? No one panicked. Maybe we were too traumatized. And there certainly was no time for sorrow, no time to think about tomorrow. It was over, but it had not passed. The uncertainty is always there. And I walked back to my room to see if it was still standing, chanting the mourner's Kaddish, the mourner's prayer. Yitgadal v'yitgadash, let us magnify and let us sanctify. Wondering, what if I really knew how to pray? What if I knew how to be without fear or thought of dying? What if I knew how to open my soul and sing psalms, hymns to the Lord, hymns higher than the Golan Heights, deeper than the Jordan Valley, vaster than the Sinai Desert? What if I knew how to sing and let loose the chords of freedom and justice and peace? Would the angels sing too? What if I really knew how to step into the void, into the nothing, into the one? Adonai Echad, God is one. Because I was alive. And in that moment, I knew I am the universe. I am the soldier and the child. I am the land and the divide. I am the bullet and the blood. I am the friend and the enemy. Shards, lines, fragments. Who can ever find certainty? Who knows what's important, where the essence of the story lives? We all live our lives between these lines, unsure, adrift and seeking. April 2011, April 2011, Jane and I met Jonathan and his wife Shelley for coffee in Starbucks in a vast shopping mall in West London. Our first proper conversation in 35 years, and I shared with him the story of Moses, Morris, Harry and me. And I said, Jonathan, were we traumatized? Were we really traumatized? And he said, in Israel, everybody is traumatized from one thing or another. How do you deal with it? How do you survive the trauma? You click off, he said, or else you click out. They had the buses waiting, you know, he said. No, I didn't. What do you mean? Oh, yeah. They had the buses waiting in Rosh Pina, down the road, ready to evacuate us. We were that close to being annihilated.
I can't draw the connection with something that you did that triggered this off, but and I'm slightly embarrassed to acknowledge this, but for the first time I realised that my Italian family, no, my Italian grandfather and the family, I've never, on one level, I've never thought of them or connected with them as a person. It was, I think it was the everyman bit that you said, and it's like that kind of having it be separate, have them be separate and distant, with a whole lot of history that I'm not going to go into now of my journey of doing that and keeping that. And it's like, I've never looked for the similarities. I've never looked for, I bet my grandfather went through that I went through. Never looked for those similarities, those connections. And I've just been given that tonight.
Great.
And it's a lovely gift.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah, please, who's that? Misha.
Shall I stand up?
Yeah, and actually, what would be really great, people just kind of said who they are and it's like a sense of location.
Oh, right. My name is Misha. I live in Totnes, but I was born in Holland. So, but what all that brought up for me, what you played out for us, was that I don't have any connection whatsoever with my grandparents. You were talking about great grandmother. You know, I didn't even know my grandmother, let alone my great, or know anything about them. So to me, it really, you know, it's not new to me because I've known this all along, but it's just that, you know, feeling adrift and stuff, adrift or searching. I won't even have a clue how to find out about these people because my mother and father are dead as well, so I don't know who to go to find out. So I've given it up, and actually my friends are now my family. So I've had to create my own family in my own life, you know. But it was, yeah, very poignant for me, that was.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
I was really moved, and in a way I didn't expect to be, because I've never really understood why people want to look at their families. I've always been like, family history. Why bother looking? It's like, what has that got to do with me? And now I'm starting to think, actually maybe it really does have something to do with me. And I've actually never really contemplated the idea that what I'm made up of might be family and past and history and stories and experiences of people who came before me. I feel quite shaken by that, actually, but also a kind of openness to that, as to a way of maybe experiencing myself at a different level, and a very beautiful level maybe, because that's what I saw there.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, thank you.
awesome.
Thanks for sharing. Please.
The thing that hit me most was your the last thing you did, the bombardment. Where that took me was my fear when I was a little boy that one day I would be forced to fight, as my parents had and my grandparents had, and the whole sense of horror that I had around the Second World War and the First World War and all the relations that were killed in that. And I'm just so grateful that I never had to do it. And your portrayal of it really moved me. There's a lot of emotion in there for me.
Thanks for sharing that. Please.
Yeah, I'm Robert, and I thought it was brilliant, though.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it was the closest thing that I've come to, because I don't know my ancestry. You know, it's like displaced, kind of losing touch with family. Some of it through my own, kind of looking down on them in a way, moving away, but also knowing that there's stuff that happens. You know, in my life, I don't know how it happens, and the closest I've kind of got to it is doing family constellation work. You know, it was like that was kind of family constellations in action. You know, yeah, just wonderful. And well, yeah, what moved, so much of it moved me, and seeing, kind of getting more of insight of what your life is about as well. You know, knowing you for all these years, but not knowing any of that. I felt very moved you saying that. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I introduce who you are?
Certainly.
Okay, so yesterday I end up in Arcturus bookshop, and over here an American accent, and I kind of got, because of Jen, I have an ear for American accent, and I start talking to this lovely man and his beautiful family. I don't know how many of you are here, and invited them spontaneously to come, and there they are.
Yeah.